Hi guys, this is Bert. Welcome to Chapter 10 of Learning 3D. For Chapter 10, we're going to be talking about pirouetting circles or pirouetting funnels. Some people call them pirouetting funnels, some people call them pirouetting hurricanes, some people call them pirouetting walls of death. There's a lot of different names for them, but basically it's just nothing more than a circle. Basically picture a hurricane and picture you pirouetting the helicopter while you do this hurricane. This is actually a pretty cool maneuver. It's not very easy to do, but it's not all that difficult. What is difficult is to be able to do it where the helicopter looks good. In other words, as you pirouette and you do your pirouetting circle, you want to make sure that you're feeding inputs all the way around each and every pirouette so that the helicopter looks smooth around that circle and it doesn't look like it's wobbling. Basically, let's show you here what a pirouetting circle looks like. This is a pirouetting circle. This is the SAB Goblin here. This is an inverted pirouetting circle or pirouetting funnel with right tail. And it's important to kind of know the distinction between all the different types of pirouetting funnels or pirouetting circles that you can do. You can do it right side up, you can do it upside down. You can do it clockwise, you can do it counterclockwise. Basically, when you do a clockwise pirouetting circle, and you're upside down, you preferably want to use left tail. And I'm going to explain that here a little bit. But basically, when you use clockwise pirouetting circle, inverted, you want to use left tail, preferably. When you do counterclockwise upside down, you want to use right tail. When you go right side up and you do a counterclockwise, you want to preferably use left tail. Right side up clockwise, you want to use right tail. And the reason for this is simple. The helicopter is traveling in a circular pattern. It's basically doing a hurricane or a wall of death or whatever you want to call it. And as you're doing this, if you're, for example, once again, if you're upside down and you are counterclockwise, when you do this, if you use right tail, the tail is always going to be steering in the direction of that circle. And by doing that, you can very easily control the helicopter by steering the stick. So you basically steer very similar to how you steer when you do a pirouetting flip. Very, very similar. Of course, you're not changing your collective up and down as you flip during the, like you do with a piro flip, but you are steering the stick. So as the helicopter comes around that circle and you start using that right tail, you would transfer from up to left to down to right, up, left, down, right. When you do it clockwise, now you use left tail. And again, the pirouette is kind of leading the helicopter into that circle. So when you do it clockwise, you're basically steering to the right. Clockwise with left tail, you steer to the right. And you start once again, up stick, right, down, left stick. And you're following that, pretty much that pirouette motion while you steer the stick. So once again, when you use left tail, you have to steer to the right or clockwise. When you use right tail, you have to steer to the left counterclockwise. And again, naturally, the right tail pirouetting circle will be done counterclockwise if you're upside down, clockwise if you're right side up. The left-handed pirouetting circle or pirouetting funnel, the left pirouetting circle will be done ideally when you are right side up. You would actually do it counterclockwise. When you're upside down, you would do it clockwise. Of course, you can do it with the other side of the tail, but at that point, the steering motion can no longer be done. At that point, you have to pretty much catch the helicopter on each one of its axes and make the correction accordingly. So the first thing I recommend, I'm going to show you something here real quick. This is slow down here. The first thing I recommend to learn this maneuver is just to cue on certain parts of the helicopter. At minimum, at bare minimum, you should be comfortable with doing forwards and backwards hurricanes, whether it is upside down or right side up. Those two orientations you have to have mastered. If you haven't mastered that, please don't even try to do this maneuver because it's just not going to come out right. It's not going to look well. Even if it comes out, it's not going to look well, and more than likely you're going to crash. But if you're comfortable with forward inverted, or forward right side up, of course, or backwards inverted, or backwards right side up, you can start practicing a pirouetting funnel. So in this case, we're doing a counterclockwise with right tail. And the first thing I recommend is, this is slow down here. I have this in slow motion so you can see. What you want to do is, if you look at the helicopter right there, it's kind of doing this. It's kind of going on a hurricane counterclockwise. When you reach this angle, it's when you want to make your initial correction. Then you pretty much don't touch the stick again until you reach this angle. At this angle, you make your next correction. So basically, you're going to start doing this maneuver by making two corrections. One correction right here, you wait, don't touch anything. One correction here, wait, don't touch anything. One correction here. So basically, as you start your pirouetting funnel, you're going to correct right here, right here, right here, and so forth. Once you're able to achieve that and you feel comfortable with that, then you can start correcting all the way throughout the pirouette. And that's when the pirouetting funnel or pirouetting circle comes to life, because that's when it starts to look smooth and in control. So a lot going on here. It's, I guess you could say, is a little bit easier to do than a pirouetting flip, because again, you don't have to collective transition up and down, but it's certainly a maneuver that requires a lot of practice. You know, it actually looks really good when you have very good control and you can actually achieve this pirouetting motion without the helicopter looking like it's wobbling. Of course, when you're making these two corrections, like I said here, and then on the tail side, the maneuver is not going to look as crisp, because you have to wait to catch the helicopter, and as you're waiting around to catch it, the helicopter is going to try to fall back flat into its flat mode. So the minute that you apply the next correction, it's going to want to come over again, and it's going to look like a pirouetting funnel or a pirouetting circle, but it's not going to look very smooth, very precise. Eventually, as you master this maneuver and you start steering the stick, whether you're doing, again, clockwise upside down or counterclockwise right side up with left tail and you steer clockwise, or whether you're doing counterclockwise or clockwise with right side up with right tail and you steer counterclockwise, as you start steering smoothly throughout the whole maneuver, then it's going to look a lot crisper and a lot cleaner, and then you're going to be in control of this maneuver. Of course, you know, at some point you can you know, learn to do reversals as well, and so forth, and you know, it takes a lot of practice, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. So if you think about it, you have 4 right side up and 4 upside down ways to do it. You have 2 upside down, one with right tail, 1 clockwise and 1 counterclockwise, and then you have 2 right side up, one with clockwise and 1 counterclockwise, and then you have left tail and right tail combinations of each one of these. So you have 8 total possible combinations. I hardly know anybody that can do all 8 perfectly. A lot of the top guys can do most of them. I can do 7 out of 8. Actually, the 8th one I can do, it just doesn't look as crisp. But anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to head out to the field and we're going to just put all this into practice and show you how you can teach yourself how to do these pirouetting funnels. Hey guys, as I explained to you earlier about the pirouetting funnels or pirouetting circles or whatever people want to call them, there's actually 8 different ways to do these things. There's, if you break them all down, you have 2 clockwise, you have a upside down and a right side up clockwise, and then you have an upside down and a right side up counterclockwise. That makes 4. That's 4, say, with left tail. If you got right tail, that's 8. 8 total different combinations. There's very few pilots in the world that can actually do all 8 perfectly. And for all practical purposes here, and because I'm not a perfect pilot, I'm going to show you 2 of these variations. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the counterclockwise right side up first. And then after that, we're going to move on to the actually, we're going to do correct. And then we're going to do counterclockwise upside down after that. A few things to keep in mind is, again, you have to have mastered your basics before you move on to this. In fact, if you've watched all the episodes of Learning 3D so far, all the chapters, you should be able to do pirouetting circles really very easily, because by now you should be able to do right side up flying as well as upside down, backwards as well as funnels with nose down and tail down. And if you have all those 4 orientations, you should be able to actually really do a pirouetting circle. So here I have my gobbler today, and I'm going to put it in low RPM, low head speed. We're going to do about 1850 on the head, or 1800 or so. And what we're going to do first is I'm going to do a very basic circle, right side up. I'm going to take it a little bit higher,
find the comfort zone here. This is kind of like where you guys want to do this, about this altitude. And then I'll do it lower later to demonstrate. But basically at about this altitude, you just do a normal circle right side up. You should be very comfortable with this. If you're not, you need to go back to the Smack 101. Same with backwards. You should be comfortable with this. You should be able to do this no problem. You should be able to fly backwards. And again, for all practical purposes, we're doing this counterclockwise. Then you should be able to do it like this with the tail down, sort of like a right side up funnel, counterclockwise. And then finally, you should be able to do it like this, like a nose down funnel, right side up. Now once you've mastered those orientations, all you got to do is just start switching it. If you get in trouble at any time, just find the sweet spot, the easiest orientation, say right side up, so stop there and stabilize your helicopter. There we go. So basically you're just doing your circles, and every time you come around you got to visualize the helicopter as if it was flying in that direction. If you're not comfortable with all these 4 different types of orientations, if you're just comfortable with say forward flying and backwards flying, then make your corrections 2 times, only twice around the circle. So for example, backwards, I correct, forward, correct, correct here, and kind of break it down into that. Breaking it into 2 sections here. Correction, correcting again, correcting again, correcting again. And the more comfortable you get with this, eventually you can keep pirouetting and still make your corrections at these 2 angles. Here, 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 here. And again, the more comfortable you are, then eventually you can make your corrections all the way around this circle. Now keep in mind, when you fly, when you do a pirouetting funnel or a pirouetting circle right side up, counterclockwise, and you use left tail, you're steering the stick in a clockwise motion. If this is the natural way the helicopter wants to do this pirouetting circle, if you start doing it with right tail, now you can no longer steer. You have to fly the helicopter through this circle. And as you can see, I'm kind of blowing it up. I can do it, it's just not very clean. But this is not the natural way for the helicopter to do this. You have to kind of like make corrections throughout the whole circle, whereas this is the natural way. It's a circular, clockwise motion. Of course, the more comfortable you get with this, the lower you can bring it. And then you can do them like really slow. I'm doing them slow, obviously. And then you can do them slow on the deck. It looks pretty cool. Again, if you get in trouble at any given moment, all you have to do is just find your sweet spot, for example, right side up. And as you get really proficient with it, you can break them into 4 points. Backwards, tail down, forward, nose down. Backwards, tail down, forwards, nose down. So once again, when you're doing these pirouetting funnels or circles, the natural way for the helicopter to do this is if you're doing counterclockwise right side up with left, you want to use left tail. That's just the natural way. At that point you're steering clockwise. If you're doing upside down pirouetting circle or pirouetting funnel, you want to do it clockwise with left tail. You're still steering to the right in a clockwise motion, kind of like how you do a piro flip. If you want to do it with right tail, then you got to change the direction of the circle. If you want to use right tail, ideally you want to do a clockwise right side up and a counterclockwise upside down. At that point what you do is use right tail and you steer to the left or counterclockwise as if you were doing a piro flip with right tail. This is the natural way for the helicopter to do the pirouetting funnel. This is 100% natural. If you change that natural flow of flying, I guess you could call it, then you can't steer the stick anymore to do these pirouetting circles. At that point you have to fly throughout every single transition on your tail. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and load a new set of batteries, and we're going to show you a pirouetting funnel or pirouetting circle upside down. Okay guys, now I have a fresh set of batteries here. We're going to do the pirouetting funnel now, or the pirouetting circle, upside down. And I'm going to actually show you how to do it counterclockwise, which I'm going to be using right tail for. That's a natural way to do it. I'm going to be steering to the left this time. So like I said before, I'm assuming that you at least know how to fly upside down, forward and backwards, counterclockwise. That's where we're going to start making our corrections initially. So I'm going to kind of wait for the helicopter to be right side up forward. I'm going to make my correction. Then I'm going to pirouette halfway for it to go backwards, of course invert it. And I'm going to make my correction. Again, forward invert it, correction, backwards invert it, correction. And then eventually I'm going to continue the pirouette without stopping it. And again, I'm going to make only corrections when it's going forward, when it's going backwards. Then we're going to start making corrections all the way around that circle with the constant pirouette, and you're going to see that I'm going to be steering counterclockwise. So once again, we're going to go to our safe altitude of, I don't know, 50 feet or so. That's where right where you want to be if you make a mistake, so you can bail out. And once you get comfortable with these, of course you can bring it down lower on the deck. Going to my idle up one here. So I'm going to start a normal hurricane that way. Okay? Again, you should be comfortable with this. You should be comfortable with this. And as a bonus, you should be comfortable with this. And you should be comfortable with this. If you're comfortable with these four, you should be able to do a pirouetting funnel, a pirouetting circle in that direction. But for practical purposes, again, we're going to start this way. And then I'm going to do a half pirouette to the right. And I'm going to correct, half pirouette. I'm going to correct. Another half pirouette, correct, correct. And eventually, you just keep your pirouette going. And you make only your corrections when you're going forward and you're going backwards. Watch my altitude here, I'm climbing a little bit. As you can see, I'm making my corrections here and here, here and here, here and here. Now, the more comfortable you get with that, eventually you're going to be able to make your corrections constantly, like this, and just steer the sticks, just like this. As you can see, I'm kind of following a counterclockwise motion here. Very little input because of the amount of throws I have, but you can still see the counterclockwise motion on my hands. Now, the more comfortable you get with that, you can practice the 4-point, which is actually a very good practice. So you start like this, change like this, change like this, change like this, again 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 like this. This is excellent practice. So that's pretty much the concept for a pirouetting funnel. Now, a pirouetting funnel, if you learn, for example, the proper orientations for the pirouetting funnel, you can turn it into a pirouetting snake or a pirouetting circle. So if you know how to do a pirouetting circle or pirouetting funnel clockwise, upside down, and counterclockwise, right side up, you could turn that into a snake. The snake is a little bit complicated because of the certain angles that you look at when you do it, but let's do a figure 8. So what we do is we start a pirouetting funnel, right side up, like I showed you earlier, okay, in this direction with left tail. But when we get right in front of us, we're actually going to make a transition from positive to negative, turn it into upside down, and continue with left tail like this, and turn it into this direction. Then another transition in the right side up. Another one in the upside down. And as you can see here, I'm steering clockwise on this move right here. Same here. And that is a pirouetting figure 8 that is based on a pirouetting funnel. Now the pirouetting snake is similar, you just have to keep pirouetting. So what you do is you start right here. And then when you come around right side up again. and then you go around upside down again, come around right side up again, come around upside down again, and then you do it the other way. Now when you get here, it gets tricky because you're belly in now. That's a difficult one, but that's a pirouetting snake. So a lot to learn with the pirouetting funnels. It's actually a pretty complex maneuver. I've always hated it myself. I think Bobby hates it too. It's one of those maneuvers where it seems like it doesn't matter how many times you practice it, it's really difficult to get it perfect, beautiful every time. And like I explained before, when you start doing the opposite tail, I'm going to try to see if I can do a little reversal here for you guys to see. Let's get it cranked up here again. When you reverse the tail, then everything changes because you're no longer steering anymore. You're just catching the helicopter at the right angle. So if I do it the same way I did it before, I'm going to go that way. And I'm going to start doing my pirouette funnel. And I'm reversing, and I'm reversing again. As you can see, my stick movements here are completely different, completely different. So that is actually something that is not, how would I explain that? I don't think that's an easy maneuver to explain when you do the pirouetting circle or the pirouetting funnel in the opposite direction of rotation. So for example, once again, if you were upside down counterclockwise and you were using left tail, or if you were upside down clockwise using right tail, you don't steer. You just have to catch the helicopter. So there's really nothing I can tell you that would make it easier for you. You have to do is just practice, 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 practice. One thing that does help tremendously is, like I explained before, learn your hurricane, invert it backwards, as well as invert it forward, as well as tail down funnel and nose down funnel, because once you master all those 4 90-degree angle orientations, then it just opens the door for the pirouetting funnels. Thanks for watching this last chapter of the first, I guess you could say, block of chapters of learning 3D. This time we talked about pirouetting circles or pirouetting funnels. Again, this is a maneuver that you have to practice a lot. And you know, initially I recommend you practice it in the simulator. If you're already proficient with the backwards, like I said, and the forwards and all these orientations that I went over during the basics chapters, then you could probably be comfortable enough at this point to go to the flying field and do it out there. But if you're not proficient with those basics, please try this in the simulator first. And then when you try it at the field, just do it up high. Do it at, you know, 50 feet or higher. And if you get in trouble, just do what I said. Find that sweet spot. Think about it first. Before you go and try to do the maneuver, think about what your most comfortable orientation is. If you're doing, for example, a counterclockwise upside down pirouetting circle like I just showed you, think about out of those 4 orientations, nose down, tail down, forward, backwards, which one is your preferred? Which one you feel totally at home with? And that is your bail out. If you make a mistake, just keep pirouetting until you find that orientation and continue to fly away. Other than that, that's it. It's just a lot of practice and repetition. So again, thanks for watching chapter number 10. We have some more advanced learning 3D ahead, but this concludes again the second 5 chapters, which will be available on DVD as well. So thanks again.